"If you break that engine, I'll marry your mother," laughed the CEO. And what the poor boy did changed his life forever. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The morning sun reflected off the chrome of Michael Thompson's vintage 1967 Mustang as it sputtered to a halt in the circular driveway of his sprawling Connecticut estate. Steam poured from under the hood like an angry dragon's breath, and Michael slammed his fist against the steering wheel in frustration. "Damn piece of junk!" he shouted, stepping out of the car in his $1,000 suit. At 40, Michael Thompson was everything money could buy. Sharp jawline, perfectly styled hair, and the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no. His tech company had made him worth over $50 million, but right now he felt powerless against this mechanical beast. "Mr. Thompson, is everything all right?" came a soft voice with a slight Spanish accent. Michael turned to see Isabella Martinez approaching with concern etched across her gentle features. She was his housekeeper, a woman who moved through his mansion like a ghost, cleaning, organizing, making his life run smoothly while remaining nearly invisible to him. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her worn jeans and faded blue blouse told the story of someone who worked hard for every dollar. "The car's dead, Isabella. I've got the biggest meeting of my career in 2 hours, and this antique decides to die on me." Michael kicked the tire, immediately regretting it as pain shot through his Italian leather shoe. "Maybe I can call a mechanic for you, Mr. Thompson. On a Saturday morning, they'll charge me triple and it'll take hours." Michael's eyes narrowed as he noticed a small figure peeking out from behind Isabella's legs. "Who's that?" Isabella's hand instinctively moved to protect the child. "This is my son, Tommy. I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson. My babysitter cancelled last minute, and I couldn't find anyone else. I promise he won't be any trouble." 7-year-old Tommy Martinez stepped forward with the fearless curiosity that only children possess. His clothes were clean, but clearly hand-me-downs, and his sneakers had seen better days. But his eyes, bright and intelligent, sparkled with something that made Michael pause. "What's wrong with the car, mister?" Tommy asked, his voice clear and confident despite his small stature. Michael let out a bitter laugh. "What's wrong? Kid, this car is older than your mother. The engine's probably seized, the radiator's shot, and God knows what else is broken." His voice dripped with condescension. "Unless you've got a magic wand hidden in those pockets, we're all out of luck." But Tommy wasn't deterred. He walked around the car, examining it with the methodical precision of someone far beyond his years. He knelt down and peered under the vehicle, then stood and studied the steam rising from the hood. "Can I look under the hood, please?" Tommy asked politely. Michael's laugh was cruel now, attracting the attention of his neighbors as his voice carried across the manicured lawns. "Oh, this is rich. The kid thinks he can fix what stumped a $50 million CEO. He turned to Isabella with a smirk that made her stomach turn. "Tell you what, Isabella, if your little boy here can actually get this car running, I'll marry you." Isabella's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Mr. Thompson, please don't—" No, I'm serious." Michael's voice grew louder, enjoying his own joke. "If this 7-year-old can do what I can't, then clearly miracles exist, and your mother deserves a millionaire husband." He slapped his knee, laughing at his own wit. But Tommy had already moved to the front of the car, his small hands working to release the hood latch. As the hood lifted, revealing the complex maze of wires, hoses, and metal that was the engine, Tommy's expression remained focused and calm. Michael stopped laughing. The child's hands moved with surprising confidence, checking connections, examining belts, his young mind processing information that most adults couldn't comprehend. Within minutes, Tommy had located a loose hose connection near the radiator, tightened it with his small fingers, and checked the coolant level. The hose came loose, and the coolant leaked out. Tommy explained matter-of-factly, "But there's still enough left. It should work now, but you'll need to add more coolant soon." Michael stared in disbelief as Tommy walked around to the driver's door. "May I?" Without waiting for an answer, Tommy climbed into the driver's seat, his feet barely reaching the pedals. He turned the key in the ignition and the engine roared to life, purring like a contented cat. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael's mouth hung open. Isabella covered her face with her hands, and Tommy climbed out of the car with a satisfied smile. "There you go, mister," Tommy said simply. "Your car's fixed." Michael Thompson, the man who had built an empire on being smarter than everyone else, stood frozen in his driveway, staring at a 7-year-old boy who had just accomplished the impossible. And somewhere in the back of his mind, his own words echoed like a promise he never intended to keep. "If this 7-year-old can do what I can't, then clearly miracles exist, and your mother deserves a millionaire husband." But promises, Michael was about to learn, have a way of coming back to change everything. The next morning, Michael Thompson woke to the sound of his phone buzzing incessantly on his nightstand. Still half asleep, he grabbed it and nearly dropped it when he saw the notifications. Hundreds of missed calls, thousands of text messages, and his social media accounts exploding with activity. The video had gone viral overnight. 3 million views and climbing rapidly. His neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, had captured every humiliating second from her kitchen window. His arrogant laughter, his cruel promise, and worst of all, Tommy's quiet triumph that made Michael look like a complete fool. "Oh God," he whispered, scrolling through the brutal comments. "Arrogant rich guy gets schooled by a kid. When will he keep his promise? That little boy is a genius, and his mom deserves so much better. This CEO thinks he's so smart but got completely outsmarted by a 7-year-old. Each comment felt like a punch to his gut. Social media had transformed him overnight into America's most hated millionaire, the heartless CEO who mocked a child and made promises he never intended to keep. "Keep your promise" was trending worldwide. His assistant Patricia appeared in his bedroom doorway, looking frazzled and exhausted. "Sir, I've been trying to reach you for hours." "The phones haven't stopped ringing. Entertainment Tonight wants an exclusive statement. Good Morning America is offering a live interview. TMZ is bidding $50,000 for behind-the-scenes access, and CNN wants to do a feature story." "About what, exactly?" Michael demanded, though his sinking stomach already knew the answer. "About your engagement announcement, sir. The media is calling it the promise that broke the internet and America's most unexpected love story. They want to know when the wedding is." Michael's face burned with embarrassment and rage. "It wasn't an engagement announcement." It was a stupid joke, a thoughtless, idiotic moment I'd give anything to take back. But as he continued reading the comments, he realized the world had already decided what this story meant. People weren't just entertained. They were emotionally invested. Mothers were writing long posts about Isabella's strength. Teachers were praising Tommy's brilliance, and everyone was demanding Michael prove that wealthy people could have hearts. "Sir," Patricia added nervously, "there's more. Your company's stock jumped 15% when the market opened. Apparently, investors think this story makes you more relatable and trustworthy, but there's also a problem. Your mother saw the video." Michael's blood turned to ice. Margaret Thompson was a formidable woman who had raised him with unwavering moral standards and zero tolerance for cruelty if she had witnessed his behavior. "She's flying in from Boston this afternoon," Patricia continued. "She said, and I quote, 'I didn't raise my son to humiliate working families for sport.'" Just then, Isabella appeared in the doorway, clutching her cleaning supplies with trembling hands. Her usually impeccable appearance was disheveled, and Michael could see she'd been crying. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept at all. "Mr. Thompson," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, I'm so sorry about yesterday. Tommy didn't mean to cause any trouble. Neither did I. We never wanted this attention. If you want us to leave immediately, I understand completely." Looking at her genuine distress, Michael felt something shift inside his chest. For the first time, he was seeing Isabella not as an invisible employee, but as a real person whose life he had just turned upside down. "Isabella," he said, his voice gentler than he'd ever used with her, "we need to talk, all three of us." That afternoon, Michael found Tommy in the estate's sprawling garden, methodically examining the prize-winning rose bushes that had made his property famous throughout Connecticut. The boy was using a small magnifying glass to inspect each bloom, making notes in a worn notebook with the concentration of a seasoned scientist. "Tommy," Michael called out, feeling strangely nervous around this remarkable child. "Can we talk for a minute?" The boy looked up with those impossibly intelligent dark eyes that seemed to hold wisdom far beyond his 7 years. There was no fear or resentment in his gaze, just curious interest. "About the car, Mr. Thompson?" "Among other things." Michael sat on the ornate stone bench, feeling awkward and out of place in his own garden. "Where did you learn to fix engines? That wasn't beginner's luck yesterday. You knew exactly what you were doing." Tommy's entire face lit up like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. "My papa taught me everything before he went to heaven. He said I had special fingers for understanding how machines work, that I could see patterns and connections other people couldn't see." The boy's expression grew more serious, shadows crossing his young features. "Mama gets worried when I talk about it too much. She thinks people will think I'm strange or different from other kids." "Different isn't always bad," Michael found himself saying. "Your father was a mechanic?" "He was an engineer with a PhD, Isabella said, joining them with soil-stained gardening gloves and profound sadness etched in every line of her face. "Carlos had his doctorate in mechanical engineering from Universidad de Barcelona. He came to America 15 years ago with such incredible dreams, such hope for building a better future for our family." Her voice trailed off, and Michael saw deep, persistent pain flickering across her features like shadows on water. This wasn't just grief. This was the soul-deep ache of dreams destroyed. "What happened to him?" Michael asked gently, surprised by the genuine compassion he felt. Isabella sat beside Tommy on the garden bench, pulling him protectively close to her side. "Car accident 2 years ago. He was working 3 different jobs to support us and save money for Tommy's education. Engineering consulting during the day, teaching Spanish at the community college 3 nights a week, and weekend automotive repair to earn extra income." Her voice cracked slightly. "He fell asleep driving home from a late repair job on a rainy Thursday night. The other driver was drunk. Carlos never had a chance to avoid the collision." Tommy's small hand found his mother's, their fingers intertwining with the practiced comfort of 2 people who had weathered unimaginable loss together. "Papa always told me that smart comes in many different packages, Mr. Thompson," Tommy said with remarkable composure. "Some people are smart with books and numbers. Some are smart with their hands and tools. Some are smart with their hearts and feelings." He said the truly smart people learn how to use all 3 kinds of intelligence together. Michael felt something fundamental crack and shift inside his chest, like ice breaking up during spring thaw. This wasn't just about a viral video or a car repair anymore. This was about a family shattered by tragedy, but held together by unwavering love and determination. "Tommy," he said carefully, studying the boy's remarkable maturity, "what else can you fix besides cars?" The boy's eyes sparkled with excitement and unmistakable pride. "Lots of different things. Yesterday I fixed Mrs. Patterson's washing machine when the repairman said it couldn't be saved. Last week I helped our mailman get his delivery truck running when it broke down on our street. Want me to show you my workshop?" I've been building something really special." The next morning brought absolute chaos that shattered Michael's normally pristine and controlled world. His phone rang every 30 seconds as reporters and news crews laid siege to his estate like a modern army. News vans lined his exclusive street, satellite dishes pointed skyward, and helicopters circled overhead like mechanical vultures hunting for the perfect shot. His business partner, David Sterling, stormed into his home office with the fury of a man whose carefully planned life had been derailed. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled from a sleepless night of damage control. "Michael, what in God's name is this absolute circus outside?" "Our biggest investors have been calling every 10 minutes since dawn, demanding to know if you've completely lost your mind." It was a thoughtless joke that spiraled out of control, David. The whole thing will blow over in a few days when America's attention span moves on to the next shiny object. Will it really? David slammed a thick stack of printed articles onto the mahogany desk with considerable force. The Martinez story isn't just trending, it's everywhere. CNN, Fox News, NBC, BBC, even international outlets in Europe and Asia. Do you have any comprehension of what I discovered while trying to contain this disaster? Michael's stomach clenched with growing dread. What did you find? Isabella isn't just your housekeeper, Michael. She's been cleaning houses throughout this entire wealthy neighborhood for 2 solid years, working 7 days a week from dawn until midnight, all to pay off her husband's crushing medical bills. $73,000 in debt from his cancer treatments and the accident aftermath. The words hit Michael like physical blows. How could you possibly know all this? Because unlike you, I actually pay attention to the people who work in our lives. David's voice rose with genuine frustration and disbelief. Isabella has never missed a single day of work in 2 years, never complained about anything, never asked for salary advances or help with her problems. She's been suffering in complete silence while scrubbing your toilets and organizing your life. So what exactly are you telling me? David leaned forward intensely, his eyes blazing. I'm telling you that you have a choice that will define who you are for the rest of your life. You can either become the heartless millionaire who publicly mocked a widow and her brilliant child for entertainment, destroying what's left of your reputation, or you can find a way to make this catastrophic situation right. Patricia burst through the door without her usual polite knock, her face pale with stress. Sir, we have a serious problem. Someone leaked Isabella's complete financial records, medical bills, and employment history to every major news outlet. They're framing this as a real-life Cinderella story, and if you don't honor your promise, you'll be cast as the villain in America's favorite fairy tale. Michael felt invisible walls closing in around him, trapping him in consequences of his own thoughtless cruelty. There's something else, Patricia added quietly, consulting her constantly buzzing tablet. Tommy's school principal called this morning. Apparently he's been working on some kind of revolutionary invention project in their advanced program. They want him to present it at the state science fair next month, and the local news stations are fighting over exclusive coverage rights. Michael's world was spinning completely out of his control, and he was beginning to realize that this story was much bigger than anyone had imagined. That evening, seeking escape from the media chaos surrounding his home, Michael found himself drawn to his rarely used 3-car garage. There, sitting cross-legged on the concrete floor in a pool of warm light, was Tommy, completely absorbed in working on what appeared to be an incredibly complex electronic device. The boy's concentration was absolutely perfect, his small fingers moving with the precision and confidence of a master craftsman. Wires, circuit boards, and small tools were arranged around him in organized patterns that spoke of a methodical, scientific mind. "What are you building there, Tommy?" Michael asked, genuinely fascinated by the child's intense focus and obvious expertise. Long-range communication device, Tommy replied, without looking up from his delicate work, his young voice filled with excitement and purpose. It's for people who can't afford cell phones or live in areas without good service. Papa started teaching me about radio frequencies, signal transmission, and antenna design before he died. He always said communication should be free and available to everyone. Michael knelt beside the cluttered workbench, amazed by the professional-grade complexity of the partially assembled device. Components that would challenge experienced engineers were being manipulated by 7-year-old hands with remarkable skill. This is incredibly advanced work for someone your age, Tommy. This looks like something you'd see in a professional electronics laboratory. Age is just a number, Mr. Thompson, Tommy said with matter-of-fact wisdom, clearly echoing beloved words from his father. Papa always taught me that intelligence isn't measured by how many years you've been alive, but by how many problems you've solved and how many people you've been able to help along the way. Your father sounds like he was an extraordinarily wise and generous man. Michael found himself genuinely moved by the child's profound understanding. Tommy finally looked up from his work, his dark eyes serious and penetrating in a way that made Michael distinctly uncomfortable. He was the smartest and kindest person I ever knew. Papa always said that the truly rich people aren't the ones with the most money sitting in bank accounts, but the ones who use their gifts to help the most people solve their biggest problems. The boy paused thoughtfully, studying Michael's face with unnerving intensity. Is that why you're thinking about helping us now, Mr. Thompson? Because of what people are saying about you on the internet and television. The question hit Michael like a physical blow, cutting straight through every defense he'd constructed. Out of the mouths of babes came truth he wasn't prepared to face. What do you think, Tommy? I think you're really scared, Tommy said with startling simplicity and devastating clarity. Not scared of marrying Mama. She's the most wonderful person in the whole world, and any man would be incredibly lucky to have her love. You're scared of becoming someone completely different than who you've always been. Change is scary, even for grown-ups with lots of money. Michael stared at this 7-year-old philosopher, realizing the child could see through him with surgical precision, recognizing truths that Michael himself was only beginning to acknowledge. Tommy, he said carefully, choosing each word with unusual care, what if I told you that helping your mother might also help me learn something crucial that I never knew I needed to understand? The boy smiled with pure, innocent joy that transformed his entire face. Then I'd say Papa was absolutely right about everything. He always told me that sometimes life's best teachers come in the smallest packages, and the most important lessons come from the most unexpected places. 3 days later, Michael sat in his attorney's imposing, mahogany-paneled office, staring in complete shock at a thick stack of legal documents that would fundamentally change his understanding of everything he thought he knew. You're telling me that Carlos Martinez held 17 separate registered patents? Michael asked, his voice barely above a whisper as he scanned page after page of complex technical specifications and legal declarations. His longtime lawyer, Robert Chen, nodded gravely from behind his massive desk, surrounded by law books and certificates that spoke of decades of legal expertise. All properly registered under his name, all related to revolutionary automotive efficiency and alternative energy solutions. After his death, the patents became tied up in probate court due to some highly suspicious procedural complications. Isabella has absolutely no knowledge that they even exist. What are these patents actually worth? Michael asked, his hands trembling slightly as he held documents that could change everything he understood about this situation. Conservative estimates put their value at $12 million minimum. Potentially much more if the right automotive companies license the technology for mass production. Tesla has been actively searching for exactly these kinds of revolutionary innovations. Ford, General Motors, and Toyota have all expressed serious interest in similar technologies. Michael's mind reeled as the staggering implications hit him like a tidal wave. So Isabella isn't just a struggling housekeeper trying to survive paycheck to paycheck. She's the unknowing widow of a brilliant inventor whose groundbreaking work could completely revolutionize the entire global automotive industry. And Tommy. Robert paused dramatically, clearly savoring the significance of his next words. The boy has been officially listed as co-inventor on 3 of the most recent and valuable patents. At 7 years old, he was already making meaningful contributions to advanced engineering concepts that could change how the world thinks about transportation. The room seemed to spin around Michael as his entire understanding of reality crumbled and rebuilt itself. Isabella wasn't some desperate woman who needed his charity. She was unknowingly sitting on a fortune that would make her independently wealthy beyond her wildest dreams. And Tommy wasn't just a gifted child with unusual mechanical abilities. He was already following in his father's genius footsteps, contributing to innovations that could literally change the world. But there's something much more sinister here, Robert continued, his expression growing dark and troubled. I conducted extensive investigation into why these valuable patents haven't been properly processed through probate. Someone has been deliberately and systematically stalling the entire legal process, filing unnecessary motions, creating bureaucratic roadblocks, and generating endless paperwork complications. Who would do something so deliberately cruel and calculated? Michael demanded, though cold dread was already forming in the pit of his stomach. Robert slid another official document across the polished desk with obvious reluctance and disgust. Sterling Automotive Consulting. Your business partner, David's private side company that he never told you about. He's been systematically working to acquire these patents for practically nothing, waiting for Isabella to become desperate enough to sell her legal rights for pennies on the dollar. Michael's blood turned to ice as the full scope of betrayal crashed over him like a freezing wave. David had known everything from the beginning. The leaked financial records, the carefully orchestrated media attention, the pressure to make quick decisions. It had all been masterfully planned to distract from the real treasure that David was attempting to steal from a grieving widow and her innocent child. Michael, Robert said quietly, his voice heavy with the weight of absolute truth. You're not just choosing whether to honor a promise you made during a moment of thoughtless cruelty. You're choosing whether to save Isabella and Tommy from being systematically robbed of Carlos's entire life's work and legacy. As Michael left the lawyer's office, one thought echoed through his mind with crystal clarity. The little boy who had fixed his broken car had just revealed something infinitely more broken and infinitely more valuable than anyone could have possibly imagined. Margaret Thompson arrived at her son's estate like an unstoppable force of nature, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the turbulent 3-hour flight from Boston, her steely grey eyes missing absolutely nothing as she surveyed the complete media circus that had transformed Michael's exclusive neighborhood into a battleground of reporters, news vans and curious onlookers. At 72, Margaret commanded respect wherever she went, her petite frame somehow radiating the kind of authority that came from decades of building business empires and raising a child with unwavering moral principles. Today, she had come to deliver judgment, and everyone could feel the weight of her presence. "Michael," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade as she entered his study without bothering to knock, her expensive handbag clutched firmly in her weathered hands. "Explain to me how my son became the most despised man in America." Michael had been dreading this inevitable conversation for 3 sleepless days and nights. His mother had built the family fortune through shrewd business decisions, calculated risks, and most importantly, an uncompromising moral compass. She had raised him to be better than the man he'd revealed himself to be in that viral video. Mother, it was a serious misunderstanding that got completely blown out of proportion by social media, and don't. Her voice could have frozen molten steel. I watched that horrific video 17 times, Michael. I saw you mock a hard-working mother and her innocent child for your own cruel amusement. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was deliberate, calculated cruelty from a man I thought I'd raised to have character. Margaret walked deliberately to the tall windows overlooking the garden, her keen eyes observing Isabella working quietly among the roses with Tommy, both of them seemingly oblivious to the storm of attention swirling around them. Tell me about them, she commanded without turning around. The real story, not the sanitized public relations version you've been feeding to the press. For the next hour, Michael found himself telling his mother everything, with an honesty that surprised him. Carlos's tragic death, Isabella's desperate 2-year struggle with crushing debt, Tommy's impossible mechanical intelligence that defied explanation, David's systematic betrayal and attempted theft, and the 17 valuable patents worth millions that Isabella had no idea existed. So this remarkable woman has been cleaning your house and organizing your life while unknowingly sitting on a fortune that could change everything for her family, and your supposed best friend and business partner has been methodically trying to steal it all from her. That's completely correct, Mother. Margaret turned slowly from the window, her expression unreadable, but somehow more terrifying than anger. And what exactly do you plan to do about this unconscionable situation? Honestly, I don't know, Michael admitted, the words feeling foreign and uncomfortable in his mouth. I've never been in a situation like this before. I've never had to consider anyone's needs but my own. Haven't you? Margaret's eyebrows rose with skeptical precision. You made a promise, Michael. Whether it was born from cruelty or kindness, whether you meant it sincerely or not, you gave your word in front of the entire world. The question isn't what you plan to do. It's what kind of man you choose to be when your character is truly tested. Just then, Patricia knocked urgently on the study door, her usually composed demeanor cracking under obvious stress. Sir, there's been a significant development. David Sterling is here at the front gate, and he's demanding to speak with you immediately. He seems extremely agitated and potentially unstable. Margaret smiled, but it wasn't pleasant. It was the predatory expression of a hunter who had just spotted her prey. How perfectly convenient. I think it's time I finally met this business partner of yours. Michael felt a chill run down his spine. His mother's calm was always more dangerous than her anger. David Sterling burst into Michael's study like a man possessed by demons, his usually immaculate appearance completely disheveled, his expensive Italian suit wrinkled and stained from what appeared to be a sleepless night of desperation. His normally perfect hair was wild, and his bloodshot eyes held the dangerous gleam of someone who had lost everything and was prepared to do anything to get it back. He stopped abruptly when he noticed Margaret Thompson sitting calmly in the leather chair, like a queen holding court, watching him with the predatory stillness of a hawk that had just spotted a particularly fat mouse. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, attempting to compose himself and failing miserably, "I didn't realize you were visiting. This is unexpected. Mr. Sterling." Her voice could have shattered diamonds. "How absolutely fortuitous. I was just learning about your fascinating business interests." David's face paled visibly, but desperation drove him forward. "Michael, we need to talk immediately, privately. The investors are getting extremely nervous about all this unwanted publicity. Stock prices are fluctuating wildly, and we need to make a definitive decision about the Martinez situation right now, before this gets any more out of hand." What kind of decision are you suggesting? Michael asked, though his sinking stomach already suspected the answer. End this ridiculous charade once and for all. Pay them some reasonable amount of money, help them relocate somewhere far from the media spotlight, and let our lives return to normal. The whole situation has gotten completely out of control, and it's affecting our business relationships. Margaret's laugh was like winter wind howling through bare trees. How remarkably generous of you, Mr. Sterling. Pay them some modest amount from patents worth $12 million. David's carefully constructed composure cracked completely, revealing the panic underneath. What are you talking about? What patents? Oh, did Michael not mention our recent discoveries? We know all about Sterling Automotive Consulting. We know about the 17 patents you've been systematically trying to steal. We know about the deliberate delays you orchestrated in probate court, the fraudulent paperwork, the bribery attempts. Margaret stood slowly, and despite being barely 5 feet tall, she somehow towered over David like an avenging angel. Did you really think you could rob a widow and her brilliant child right under my son's nose without anyone noticing? David's face cycled rapidly through shock, rage, and desperate denial. Those patents should have been public domain by now. Carlos Martinez was just a lucky mechanic who stumbled onto some ideas. He was a PhD engineer with 17 revolutionary inventions, you pathetic, greedy little man. Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper that was infinitely more terrifying than shouting. And Tommy is officially listed as co-inventor on 3 of the most valuable ones. At 7 years old, that remarkable child understands engineering concepts that apparently escape your comprehension entirely. Michael, David turned desperately to his former partner, his voice cracking with emotion. You can't possibly believe this insane nonsense. We've been friends for 15 years. We built this company together from nothing. Friends don't systematically try to steal from widows and children, Michael said quietly, and David realized with dawning horror that he had lost everything that mattered. The sound of police sirens in the distance grew steadily closer, their wailing growing louder with each passing second. Margaret smiled with satisfaction. I took the liberty of calling the authorities about the fraudulent court filings, the attempted theft of intellectual property, and the conspiracy to defraud. They should be here any moment now. As David Sterling was led away in handcuffs, screaming about injustice and conspiracies, Michael realized his mother had just saved him from making the biggest mistake of his life. But he also knew that the most difficult and important conversation of his entire existence was still ahead of him. The next morning, Tommy led Michael and Margaret on a journey to a converted garden shed behind the estate that Michael hadn't bothered to visit in over 3 years. When Tommy opened the door and switched on the lights, they discovered something that completely defied belief and challenged everything they thought they knew about what a 7-year-old child could accomplish. The workshop was an absolute marvel of organization, innovation, and scientific precision. Professional-grade workbenches lined every wall, covered with electronic components, precision tools, and sophisticated devices in various stages of completion. Complex diagrams and advanced mathematical calculations covered every available surface, written in a child's careful handwriting, but containing engineering concepts that would challenge graduate students. This is what I've been working on, Tommy said with obvious pride, leading them to a central table where a device roughly the size of a small radio sat gleaming under the bright workshop lights, its sleek design and professional construction immediately apparent. It's beautiful, Mijo, Isabella said softly, though Michael could see she didn't fully understand the significance of what she was looking at. What exactly does it do? Margaret asked, her MIT engineering degree allowing her to immediately recognize the sophistication and complexity of the construction. Tommy's entire face lit up with excitement and purpose. It's a mesh network communicator designed for emergency situations. People in rural areas or disaster zones can use these devices to communicate with each other even when all the regular communication systems are completely down or destroyed. They automatically connect to each other and create their own independent network that doesn't rely on cell towers or internet infrastructure. Michael picked up the device carefully, amazed by its compact design and obviously professional construction. The weight felt substantial, but not heavy, and every detail spoke of precision engineering. "Tommy, this is incredibly advanced work. How did you possibly—" "Papa started teaching me about mesh networks, emergency communications, and disaster preparedness before he went to heaven." Tommy's voice grew serious and focused. "He said that during hurricanes, earthquakes, and other emergencies, when people need help the most desperately, that's exactly when all the communication systems fail and leave families separated and afraid." The boy's expression became more determined. "I want to make absolutely sure that never happens to other families. No child should ever have to wonder if their parents are safe, and no parent should ever have to worry about finding their children after a disaster." Margaret examined the technical drawings scattered across the workbench with growing amazement, her engineering background allowing her to understand the staggering complexity of what she was seeing. "Tommy, these calculations and circuit designs, some of these concepts are graduate-level work that would challenge experienced engineers. Papa always said, 'I see patterns and connections differently than other people,'" Tommy replied with matter-of-fact simplicity. He called it a special gift that came with responsibility to help others. Isabella moved closer to her son, pride and maternal concern warring in her expression. "Sometimes I worry that he's growing up too fast, that he's missing out on normal childhood experiences because he's always thinking about helping people." "Mama," Tommy said gently, reaching for his mother's hand with touching tenderness, "helping people isn't work. It's pure joy. Papa taught me that the happiest people are the ones who use their gifts to make life better for others." Just then, Patricia burst into the workshop, her face flushed with excitement and barely contained enthusiasm. "Tommy, the State Science Fair Organization called? They want to move your project directly to the national competition, skipping all the preliminary rounds, and MIT's engineering department wants to schedule a meeting to discuss your invention." Margaret and Michael exchanged meaningful glances. This child wasn't just exceptionally gifted, he was potentially revolutionary, capable of changing how the world thought about emergency communications. And he still had no idea about the patents that could fund his inventions for multiple lifetimes. "There's something else," Patricia continued breathlessly. "The patent office called with an update. They're expediting the probate process for all of Carlos Martinez's patents. All artificial delays have been completely removed, and the transfer should be finalized within days." Isabella looked confused and slightly overwhelmed. "Patents? What patents are you talking about?" Michael took a deep breath, knowing the time had finally come to tell her everything. That evening, Michael sat across from Isabella at his kitchen table, the same table where she had served him countless meals over 2 years, without him ever truly acknowledging her presence or expressing genuine gratitude. Margaret had insisted they meet here in the warm heart of the home, where real conversations happened and authentic relationships were built. "Isabella," Michael began carefully, choosing each word with deliberate precision, "there are critically important things about Carlos that you need to know, things that will change everything about your situation." "What kind of things?" Her voice was cautious and protective, the tone of someone who had learned to expect bad news. Michael slid the thick stack of patent documents across the polished table. "Your husband was much more than just a brilliant engineer. He was a revolutionary inventor. These 17 patents are officially registered in his name." and Tommy's name appears as co-inventor on the 3 most recent and valuable ones. Isabella stared at the legal papers as if they were written in an incomprehensible foreign language. "I don't understand any of this. Carlos never mentioned anything about patents or inventions. He talked about his work, but never like this." "He was probably waiting for the perfect time to tell you everything," Margaret said gently, her voice filled with understanding. "Men sometimes try to protect their families from uncertainty and stress until they're absolutely sure everything will work out successfully. What do these patents actually mean for Tommy and me?" Isabella asked, her hands trembling slightly as she held the complex documents. "They mean," Michael said softly, his voice filled with genuine emotion, "that you and Tommy are multi-millionaires. These patents are conservatively valued at $12 million, possibly much more if major automotive companies license the technology for mass production." The silence that followed was profound and overwhelming. Isabella's face went through a dozen different emotions: disbelief, confusion, hope, gratitude, and finally, crushing grief for the husband who had continued caring for his family even after death. "He was still taking care of us," she whispered, tears streaming down her face like rivers of pain and love. "Even after he died, Carlos was still trying to make sure we'd be safe and secure." Tommy, who had been listening quietly from the kitchen doorway, came immediately to his mother's side with the instinctive compassion of a child who understood suffering. Papa always said his inventions were love letters to the future. He wanted to make absolutely sure we'd be okay, no matter what happened to him." Isabella pulled her son close to her, her body shaking with sobs that came from the deepest places of her heart. "All this time, I thought we were completely alone in the world. I thought we had nothing left of him but fading memories and photographs." "No, you were never alone," Michael found himself saying with surprising conviction. "And you have so much more than memories. You have his incredible legacy, his revolutionary dreams, and most importantly, his endless love for both of you." Margaret watched this emotional scene with tears in her own eyes, remembering her own husband's death decades earlier and the overwhelming grief that had nearly consumed her. "Isabella, dear, there's something else you need to understand. The reason you didn't know about these valuable patents is because someone was deliberately and systematically hiding them from you. Who would do such a cruel and heartless thing?" "My former business partner," Michael admitted, shame coloring his voice. "He was methodically trying to steal them from your family. But he's been arrested for fraud, and all the legal obstacles have been completely removed. The patents are being transferred to your name immediately." Isabella looked up at Michael with an expression he had never seen before. Not gratitude, not relief, but something much deeper. Understanding, perhaps. Recognition of genuine character change. "You didn't have to tell me about any of this," she said quietly. "You could have let me continue living in ignorance, and your promise wouldn't have mattered anymore. You could have walked away free and clear." "Yes," Michael replied honestly, "I could have done exactly that. But it wouldn't have been right, and it wouldn't have been the man I want to become." "And now?" Her question hung in the air like a challenge. Michael took a deep breath, gathering courage he didn't know he possessed. "Now I want to ask you something important, and I want you to understand that you have complete freedom to say no. You don't need me or anyone else anymore. You're independently wealthy. You can go anywhere in the world, do anything you've ever dreamed of." He paused, his heart racing. "But I'd like the opportunity to start over. Not because of a promise made in cruelty, but because over these past few incredible days, I've discovered that the most important things in life have been right here in my house all along, and I was too blind and selfish to see them." Isabella studied his face for a long, intense moment, seeing something there that hadn't existed just 1 week ago. What exactly are you asking me, Michael? I'm asking if you'd let me try to earn your love. Not as your employer, not as someone who made a foolish public promise, but as a man who's just beginning to understand what really matters in life. Before Isabella could formulate an answer, Tommy's clear voice cut through the emotional tension. "Mr. Michael, can I ask you something really important?" "Of course, Tommy, anything." "Do you love my mama because she's rich now, or because of who she really is inside?" The question hung in the air like the most important challenge of Michael's entire life, and he realized that everything, his future, his redemption, his chance at genuine happiness, depended completely on how he answered this remarkable 7-year-old boy. "Tommy," Michael said, kneeling down carefully to meet the boy's penetrating eyes at his level, "that's the most important and honest question anyone has ever asked me in my entire life." The kitchen fell completely silent, except for the steady ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the hallway, each second stretching into what felt like eternity, as 3 people waited for words that would determine not just their immediate future, but the trajectory of their entire lives together. "I've been asking myself that exact same question every single day for the past week," Michael continued, his voice steady, but vulnerable in a way he'd never allowed himself to be before. "And here's what I've discovered through this incredible life-changing experience. I started paying attention to your mother because of my stupid, thoughtless promise, but I began truly caring about her because of who she is as a human being." He turned to face Isabella directly, his eyes never leaving hers, speaking from a place of absolute honesty. "I love that you work 7 exhausting days a week without ever complaining, just to provide for your son. I love that you raised a child who sees the best in everyone, even someone who was initially cruel to him. I love that you faced impossible hardship with dignity, grace, and unwavering strength." Michael's voice grew stronger and more confident. "I love that you work in gardens and find genuine joy in small, beautiful moments. I love that you loved Carlos so completely and purely that 2 years after losing him, you still wear your wedding ring and speak of him with such tenderness and respect. I love that you're raising a son to be brilliant and kind and generous, even when the world hasn't always been kind to your family." He paused, swallowing hard against the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "The money doesn't change who you are, Isabella. It just means you finally have the security and freedom you've always deserved. Whether you have $12 in your wallet or $12 million in the bank, you're still the most remarkable, strong, and beautiful woman I've ever had the privilege to know." Isabella's eyes filled with tears, but she remained thoughtfully silent, waiting for him to finish this declaration that was clearly coming from the deepest places of his heart. "And Tommy," Michael continued, turning back to address the boy's original question directly, "to answer you with complete honesty, I fell in love with your mother's incredible heart, her strength, her kindness, and her dignity long before I knew anything about your father's valuable patents. The money just means I don't have to worry about anyone thinking I'm offering charity when I'm really asking for a chance at genuine happiness." Tommy studied Michael's face with that unnerving intelligence that seemed to see straight through to people's souls, weighing every word and evaluating the sincerity behind each statement. Finally, he turned to his mother with the wisdom of someone far beyond his years. "What do you think, Mama?" Isabella was quiet for a long, contemplative moment, her gentle hands smoothing Tommy's dark hair as she gathered her thoughts and considered the magnitude of the decision before her. "Michael, 1 week ago, you saw me as completely invisible. You walked past me every single day for 2 years without acknowledgement or recognition. You made cruel jokes at our expense for your own entertainment. Why should I believe that fundamental change is possible?" The question was entirely fair, and Michael felt its full weight settling on his shoulders. "Because," he said with simple honesty, "for the first time in my adult life, I'm not trying to impress anyone or manipulate a situation to get something for myself. I'm just trying to become worthy of something precious and irreplaceable that I almost lost through my own stupidity and arrogance." Margaret, who had been observing this entire exchange in thoughtful silence, finally spoke with the authority of someone who had lived through decades of human complexity. "Isabella, dear, may I share something personal with you?" Isabella nodded respectfully. "I raised Michael to be financially successful, and I'm genuinely proud of what he's accomplished in business. But I failed completely to teach him how to see the people around him as fully human beings worthy of respect and consideration. This week, watching him discover empathy, humility, and genuine compassion, I've seen my son finally become the man I always hoped he could be." She paused, her voice growing softer and more intimate. "You don't owe him anything at all. But if you choose to give him a real chance, I believe you'll discover he's finally become worthy of your consideration." Tommy looked thoughtfully between all the adults, then made a decision that surprised everyone in the room. "Mr. Michael, can I show you something really special?" He ran quickly to his backpack and carefully pulled out a worn, treasured photograph. Carlos, Isabella, and baby Tommy, all laughing joyfully at some long-forgotten joke. The image radiated happiness, love, and the kind of family bond that transcends everything else. "Papa always said that real love isn't about perfect people finding each other," Tommy said, handing the precious photograph to Michael with ceremonial seriousness. "It's about imperfect people choosing to see the best in each other every single day, even when it's difficult." He looked directly at Michael with those remarkable eyes. "Papa would want Mama to be happy again, and I think you could make her happy if you really truly try and never stop trying." Isabella looked at her son in absolute amazement. "Tommy, are you completely sure about this? Mama, you've been sad for 2 whole years. Not just because Papa died, but because you've been so scared and alone, carrying everything by yourself." Tommy's voice carried wisdom far beyond his years. "Mr. Michael isn't perfect, but he's genuinely trying to be better. Papa always said that's all any of us can really do. Try to be better tomorrow than we were today." Isabella turned back to Michael, her expression still unreadable but somehow softer. "If I said yes, and I'm not saying yes yet, what would that actually look like? How would we even begin to build something real?" Michael felt hope bloom like spring flowers in his chest. "However you want it to look. We could start with proper dinner dates, real dates where I pick you up like a gentleman and we talk about our dreams, our fears, our hopes for the future. Where I learn your favorite foods and you tell me wonderful stories about Carlos and Tommy's childhood. Where we build something genuine, honest and lasting, one conversation at a time. And Tommy's place in all of this? Tommy would be the most important part of any life we built together. I want to help him develop his incredible inventions, support his education in every way possible, and continue learning from his remarkable wisdom. He's already taught me more about what truly matters than I learned in 40 years of selfish living." Isabella was quiet for another long, thoughtful moment. Finally, she spoke with a small smile beginning to form at the corners of her mouth. "Michael, I need time to think about everything. This is all so overwhelming. The patents, the media attention, the possibility of us. I need space to process all these life-changing revelations." "Of course," Michael said quickly, not wanting to pressure her. "Take all the time you need. No pressure, no expectations, no timeline." "But," Isabella continued, her smile growing slightly brighter, "I wouldn't be opposed to that dinner you mentioned, as a beginning to see what might be possible." Tommy cheered with pure joy, Margaret smiled with deep satisfaction, and Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine happiness that had absolutely nothing to do with money, success, or personal achievement. But outside the kitchen window, completely unknown to any of them, a determined reporter had been listening at the window for the past hour, recording every word of their most private conversation. By morning, this intimate moment would become tomorrow's headline, and their newfound bond would be tested in ways none of them could possibly imagine. The next morning, Michael woke to his phone buzzing with an urgency that made his stomach drop. The headline on every major news website made his blood run cold. Millionaire's private love confession caught on tape. Exclusive audio recording reveals Thompson's true motives. The reporter had captured everything, every word of their intimate conversation, every vulnerable admission, every private moment they'd shared in the kitchen. Within hours, their most personal exchange was being dissected by millions of strangers across the internet. "Oh, God," Michael whispered, scrolling through the brutal comments. "He's just trying to look good for the cameras. Rich guy trying to buy love with patent money. This whole thing is fake." Patricia burst into his room, her face pale with panic. "Sir, it's everywhere. Every network, every social media platform. They're saying you orchestrated the whole thing for publicity." Michael felt his world crashing down around him. After everything they'd been through, after the genuine connection they'd built, it was all being twisted into something ugly and calculated. He found Isabella in the garden, sitting on the stone bench with tears streaming down her face, holding Tommy close as he tried to comfort her. The sight broke something inside Michael's chest. "Isabella, I'm so sorry," he began, but she held up her hand to stop him. "Michael, I can't do this," she said quietly. "I can't live my life being scrutinized, analyzed, judged by strangers who don't know us. Tommy and I, we're private people. This attention, this constant invasion, it's destroying us." "Mama," Tommy said softly, "remember what Papa always said about storms." Isabella smiled through her tears. "That they make the strongest trees grow deeper roots." "Maybe this storm is here for a reason," Tommy continued with his remarkable wisdom. "Maybe we're supposed to learn something." Just then, Margaret appeared on the garden path, but she wasn't alone. Behind her walked an elderly man with kind eyes and a warm smile, carrying a thick folder of documents. "Isabella, Tommy," Margaret said gently, "I'd like you to meet Dr. James Harrison. He was Carlos's professor at MIT, and he has something very important to tell you." "Doctor." Harrison sat beside Isabella on the bench, his expression filled with profound respect. "Mrs. Martinez, I've been trying to find you for 2 years. Your husband was my most brilliant student, but more than that, he was working on something extraordinary when he died." He opened the folder, revealing additional patents and research documents. Carlos wasn't just an inventor. He was developing a comprehensive system to provide free communication and renewable energy to underserved communities worldwide. He called it Project Hope. Tommy's eyes widened with recognition. "Papa used to talk about Project Hope. He said it would help families who didn't have what we had." "That's right," Dr. Harrison continued. "But here's what you don't know. Carlos set up a foundation in your names, funded by future patent royalties. He wanted to ensure that when his inventions made money, that money would go toward helping families just like yours." Isabella stared at the documents in amazement. "He created a foundation." "More than that," Dr. Harrison smiled. "He predicted that Tommy would continue his work. There's a letter here, sealed, with instructions that it only be opened when Tommy demonstrated the same passion for helping others that Carlos had." With trembling hands, Tommy opened the letter his father had left for him. As he read aloud, his young voice filled with emotion. "My beloved Tommy, if you're reading this, it means you've inherited not just my knowledge, but my heart for helping others. The patents aren't just about money, they're about responsibility. Use them to build the world I dreamed of, where no family suffers alone, where communication and energy are rights, not privileges. Remember, mijo, The greatest inventions come from love, not logic. I'm so proud of the man you're becoming." Tears flowed freely as the full scope of Carlos's legacy became clear. He hadn't just been providing for his family. He'd been building a foundation to help thousands of families. "There's more," Dr. Harrison said. "When the story of your family went viral, something beautiful happened. Donations poured into the foundation from people inspired by your story. We now have enough funding to launch Project Hope immediately, creating jobs, providing free communication devices to disaster areas, and offering scholarships to children like Tommy." Michael listened to all this in stunned silence, finally understanding the true magnitude of what he'd stumbled into. This wasn't just about a promise or a marriage. It was about being part of something that could change the world. "Isabella," he said quietly, "I understand if you can't handle the public attention. But what if we used it for something good? What if we showed people that real love stories aren't perfect? They're about imperfect people choosing to build something beautiful together." Isabella looked at the foundation documents, then at Tommy's radiant face, then at Michael's hopeful expression. "You would really want to be part of this? To help carry on Carlos's dream?" "I can't think of anything I'd rather do with my life," Michael said with absolute sincerity. "Carlos was the man I should have been all along. Let me learn from his example. Let me help you build the world he envisioned." Tommy suddenly stood up, his face bright with excitement. "I have an idea. What if we invite everyone to our wedding? Not just family, everyone who's been following our story. We could show them that love is real, that families can heal, that hope is stronger than hurt." Isabella laughed through her tears. "Tommy, are you proposing for Michael?" "Someone has to," Tommy grinned. "You grown-ups are taking forever." Michael dropped to one knee right there in the garden, taking Isabella's hand in his. "Isabella Martinez, will you marry me? Not because of a promise made in cruelty, but because I love you. I love Tommy, and I want to spend my life helping you build Carlos's dream." "Yes," Isabella whispered, "but on one condition, anything. We do this Tommy's way. We invite the world to celebrate with us, and we use this attention to launch Project Hope. We turn our love story into something that helps other families find hope." 6 months later, Michael and Isabella's wedding became the most watched ceremony in television history. Held in their garden where Tommy had first fixed the car, it featured not just their vows, but the official launch of the Carlos Martinez Foundation for Global Communication and Renewable Energy. Tommy, now 8 and already accepted to MIT's early admission program, served as ring bearer and delivered a speech that left millions in tears. "Papa always said love multiplies when you share it. Today, we're sharing our love with the whole world, and we're asking everyone to help us build a future where no family faces their storms alone." The foundation raised $50 million in its first year. Tommy's emergency communication devices were deployed to disaster zones worldwide, and Michael Thompson, once America's most hated millionaire, became known as the man who proved that love could indeed change everything. But the greatest transformation was in the quiet moments, family dinners where they shared stories of Carlos, evenings in Tommy's workshop where Michael learned to see the world through the eyes of wonder, and peaceful mornings in the garden where Isabella taught him that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought, only earned through love, patience, and the courage to become someone worthy of such gifts. Sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the simplest acts of kindness, and sometimes the most broken promises lead to the most beautiful beginnings.